Hello everyone. Through this webinar, I'm going to share how government, commercial, prime and subcontractors are bidding for multi-million-dollar RFP, RFQ by creating ISO, CMMI, CMMC systems on time. In this webinar, you will learn who this is for, why are government commercial contractors requiring certifications, what are the standards and process steps, and how to achieve compliance and certification on time. Watch this webinar till the end to get an overview of the process. Now you might wonder, is this for me? The answer is yes. And that depends on if you have an RFP, RFQ requiring ISO, CMMI, CMMC certifications, or if you have a prime teaming agreement contingent upon ISO, CMMI, CMMC certification. These primes can be requested from some partners. This can be from your vendors. It is important that this applies to companies bidding for commercial contracts as well. Most of our commercial and government contracting companies have these common pain points. The most critical being confidential information. Will our internal or client confidential information need to be shared as part of certification process? ISO is and CMMI, CMMC require audits to be conducted by a third party. These audits require certain evidence to be shared, and hence this has been the most critical pain point. The second one is the resource constraint. Most of the companies have a very skeletal or smaller back office support team. Most dedicated resources work on the ongoing projects as billables. Also, there is a need of expertise to understand and implement standards. That requires hiring of a person. And the last main point is around management and maintenance of multiple standards over time. These standards require, as I mentioned, audits. ISO audits are to be done every year, and every 3-year recertification audit occurs. CMMI requires 3-year appraisal. CMMC requires audit every year. Also, to manage the standards over a period of time, you need a person at a dedicated resource. This necessitates sometimes hiring of quality person. The reason I know about these pain points is because I work with a lot of commercial and government contracting companies. Hello, my name is Sunita Verma. I started my journey with ISO some 19 years ago with lab testing oil. Since then, I have implemented various ISO standards with 193 plus various sizes of organizations. I have learned a lot about organizations and how a good management system can make an organizational success. Sync Resource was founded with the sole objective to help organizations seeking ISO, CMMI, CMMC certifications and share the knowledge that I have learned. My expertise is implementation of management systems as well as integration of multiple standards. Here is a testimonial from one of our commercial clients, Advantage Route Systems. They are makers of a software. ISO has been their goal for a few years, but they have not achieved that objective. So they decided to hire a consultant to help support them through their journey. Their goal was to be certified within 6 to 1 year, and they were successfully able to achieve the goal. The next testimonial is through a government contracting company, and their situation was unique in the sense that they had to get 3 standards, but they prioritized 20,001 just because there was a proposal that was going to be dropped within a month's time frame. Since we were already in the process of getting them prepared and successfully audited and certified in their proposed time frame, client was able to go for the proposal and also win it. Client was very happy with the results. Now, how do we get these results? Why government and commercial contracts need certification? Procurement occurs through a pool of pre-vetted selected vendors. The criteria is defined and established as a baseline. This allows for consistent streamlining process for ease of performance management of these vendor database. Also, there is transparency during contract lifecycle. The contract lifecycle for similar contracts is from 1 to 5 years, and there is extensions. Government as well as commercial contractors all are facing increased security threats to the critical infrastructure. As they work with vendors who are pre-selected and follow certain processes, this allows for securing these infrastructures. So what is this ISO, CMMI and CMMC standards and requirements? We are listing only the most popular standards asked in the RFP, RFQ currently. There are about 22,700 standards. We will be discussing only the ones that have occurred in these RFPs. So the first one we see all the time is ISO 9001:2015. It's a set of requirements for a quality management system. This applies to various industry verticals and is process-oriented standards. standards. Applies to both manufacturing, service industries. The next one is ISO 20000-1 2018. It's a set of requirements for service management systems. Applies to service providing organizations. For example, IT managed services, staffing, staff augmentation, skilled resources, or similar. The next one is ISO 27001-2013. It is a requirements for information security management system. This applies to information security in any organization. This particular standard applies to a certain department who protects the critical information. CMMI, SVC, Dev, Acquisition refers to Capability Maturity Model Integration. This appraisal goes from level 1 to 5 and applies to service development or acquisition of services in organization. And the latest introduction is CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, also certified from level 1 through 5 and applies to security posture and maturity of an organization. It is important to note that for CMMC level 3, you have to be handling CUI information. Everybody who handles FCI have to be appraised or certified to level 1 and level 2. In order to answer all these questions, here's what we are going to cover. The 3-step process required for certification. Associated cost for certification, team commitment, timeline, and milestones. So in the previous slides, I talked about a number of standards. Securing all these standards is a mighty task. Now, in order to secure the standards, you might wonder, how do I start? We're going to answer those questions for you and tell you the processes that are followed for the success of all these organizations. Here's what we are going to cover. 3-step process required for certification, associated cost for certification, team commitment, timeline, and milestones. The 3-step process starts with the certification awareness, preparation, and the third-party audit. The phase 1 of this 3-step process includes information meeting, wherein there is an introduction with the stakeholders to learn about the unique attributes of the business, followed by gap assessment to identify the gaps in the system in relation to the standard and also understand how different departments are interrelated. Awareness program objective is to understand organization's goal and consulting process prior to commencing of the formal activities. Phase 2, there is a department SME interview to understand and align the process as close to those followed at the organization. Documentation and implementation, as the name suggests, drafting processes and procedure followed by implementation and identification of non-conformances. Internal audit training and execution, verification of system created and identify any non-conformance as well as improvement as part of the audit process, followed by external audit wherein you get the certification. The most important critical takeaways from these 3-step processes to do a thorough gap assessment with a detailed report and a remediation plan. It is crucial to engage the key process owners. It is important to note that when these standards change and evolve over a period of time, the need for documented system is to the extent necessary in the format manageable. Mandatory to conduct management review and internal audit once a year. For all these standards, the directives are stated within the standard guidelines, and it is important to note that you have to follow an 11-month for calendar as opposed to a 12-month because that would result into a non-conformance. Now let's talk about the cost associated with securing and maintaining certifications. We have broken down the cost into direct, indirect cost, and maintenance cost. Please remember these direct costs, some will apply and some will not, and I'll point out which ones. So the direct costs are the consulting expert cost. Now you may choose to secure support from an external consultant. If you're going towards certification, there will be a cost associated with a certification body or appraisal body. You may choose to select documentation kits. There is a cost associated with that. Or you may choose to go the route of cloud softwares. The indirect costs are internal resource time utilization, that is a dedicated resource assigned to the project. Also, any improvements that are identified and implemented. Now, some of the standards require securing some tools. It's not stated within the standard, but in order to meet the control requirements, certain tools like ServiceNow, Jira may be required. Again, these are examples. There can be many systems or tools that can be secured. And finally, the maintenance cost. Annual internal audits have to be done. So maybe you have an internal resource who is trained to do the internal audit, or you can secure external consulting support to perform these audits. And there is an annual surveillance audit. So let's set the record straight now. ISO and CMMI is about streamlining process, and documentation can be in any format: Word, flowchart, hard copy, soft copy. Certifications don't require organizations to change their ways the business operates, and organizations don't need to spend thousands of dollars in annual maintenance. Let me address the pain points we had initially shared with you. So ISO CMMI, CMMC does not require client, project, business, confidential information to be shared during audit. Audit does allow for verbal affirmations. It is allowed that you redact some of the information which is critical to you. For example, I've seen most of the time proposal costs and project critical information, which is very specific to either the service or the development that's going on, being redacted. Also, it is advisable to create a management system that best aligns with your organization's need and not over-document it. This will bring down your resource constraints. You need additional resources to manage a very bulky and overly documented system. Additionally, a very lean system will allow for ease of management, maintenance, and audit. Remember, you are going to be audited every year, and that would require all these documents to be reviewed prior and during the audit. So if you have a very document-heavy system, it will require more number of audit days. You can also train your internal resources who are the process owners, and there is no need to hire a quality person for this. Now let's discuss the team commitment. I've been asked this question many times, so you might wonder, and this is one of the pain points as well, how much time your resources are going to be tied with ISO and CMMI and CMMC projects. So each process owner is going to be part of some of the phases during the gap assessment, drafting and review of the document, implementation, training, internal audit, and external audit. The average time commitment for the process owner is 50 to 60 hours for the entire process. Now, this is only for one standard, which is spread over 6 months. If you are a smaller organization and have limited resources and wearing multiple hats, this time may increase a little bit more. It will not double. Here's an example of the timeline with the milestones. When the projects are established, you really want a robust timeline with milestone associated for the success. You want to start with project charter, identify the stakeholders, define the planning, execution, and the monitoring. Now let's talk about some of the existing solutions that exist in the market. So for starters, you can always get a consulting service. The upside of the consulting service is you have a dedicated expert handholding throughout the certification process. A consultant knows with that you will meet the timelines and milestones for the certification. There will be a culture of accountability with management support, and you will have the support during the external audit as well. The downside is consulting services are expensive. Also, it's very difficult to find a good consultant. The next solution that exists is documentation toolkits. The upside of documentation toolkit is they are very inexpensive to purchase a standard certificate. You get a lot of documentation. There are also good tailoring guides to adapt. The downside of documentation kit is you need a quality person on staff to interpret and implement the system. And toolkits are made keeping in mind all industry verticals, so there is no different toolkit for a manufacturing and service industry. You get just a canned document. The other solution is software as a solution. So the upside of this solution is you get a dedicated, secure environment for the management system. You get templates for tailoring, workflow sequencing, and document approval process. The downside is that cloud or server-based solution require a person to have some level of knowledge of IT and quality. You can hire different people for these roles as well. Also, similar to the documentation kit, you need a quality person on staff to interpret and implement the system. Now that we have discussed the entire process and what it entails, you have two choices. Go DIY by using the documentation kits, or software that requires some level of expertise and take your project months to complete, or fast track it by getting expert handholding who can get your project completed easily, efficiently, and on time, guaranteed. So if you want to fast track your certification process and want to find out information specific to your situation, set up a no obligation call with a strategy advisor by clicking on the button below. Thank you for listening.